The 12 are chosen, next on One Gospel. On the mountainside, he appoints the 12 apostles, heals, and gives a sermon. This is taken from the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Questions to consider. What is the significance of 12 apostles? But how many apostles were there in total? Was it just 12? What's the source of the power that they were given? So let's read. It came to pass in those days that he went up to the mountain to pray, and continued all night in prayer to God. When it became day, he called those he wanted, and his disciples went away to him, and he chose and appointed 12 from them, whom he also named apostles, that they should be with him, and that he might send them out to proclaim, and to have authority to heal sicknesses and to cast out demons. Simon, whom he also surnamed Peter, and Andrew his brother, and James the son of Zebedee, and John the brother of James, and he gave them the names Boanerges, which is sons of thunder, and Philip, and Bartholomew, and Matthew, and Thomas, and James the son of Alphaeus, and Judah Thaddeus the son of James, and Simon the Canaanite called the Zealot, and Judah Iscariot, who also betrayed him. He came down with them and stood on a level place with a crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of the people from all Judea and Jerusalem, and from the sea coast of Tyre and Sidon, who came to hear him and to be healed of their diseases, as well as those who were tormented with unclean spirits, and they were healed. The whole multitude sought to touch him, for power went out from him and healed them all. So he chose and appointed 12. Jesus chose 12 out of a larger group of disciples.
Jesus answered them, "Have I not chosen you 12, and one of you is a devil?"
The 12 apostles were called by Jesus to proclaim the gospel to the 12 tribes of Israel.
Go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
They were to ultimately judge the 12 tribes of Israel.
You who have followed me in the regeneration, when the Son of Man will sit on the throne of his glory, you will also sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel.
The 12 apostles were considered to be the foundation, both by Paul and by John, who describes a vision of the bride of the Lamb.
And there came unto me one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials full of 7 last plagues, and talked with me, saying, Come hither, I will shew thee the bride, the Lamb's wife. And he carried me away in the spirit to the great high mountain, and shewed me the great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of the heaven from God, having the glory of God, and her light was like unto a stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal, and had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and the names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. On the east 3 gates, on the north 3 gates, the south 3 gates, and on the west 3 gates. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and in them the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb.
The importance of keeping the number at 12 was maintained by the apostles in the very beginning after Judas Iscariot died.
And they appointed 2, Joseph called Barsabbas, who is surnamed Justus, and Matthias. And they prayed and said, Thou, Lord, which knowest the hearts of all men, show whither of these 2 thou hast chosen, that he may take part of this ministry and apostleship, from which Judas by transgression fell, that he might go to his own place. And they gave forth their lots, and the lot fell upon Matthias, and he was numbered with the 11 apostles.
However, after James, son of Zebedee, was killed in Acts 12, verse 2, we are not told that any further attempt was made to maintain the group of 12. So Matthias was added to give 12, but they didn't seem to do anything further after other people died. The word apostle means one sent, and the verb form of apostle is often used as well. Jesus himself was sent and was therefore an apostle. So he was called an apostle in the Epistle of Hebrews, and the verb form of apostle was used to describe him as one being sent by God. Paul himself was called an apostle by himself. He called himself an apostle in the beginning of multiple letters he wrote. And that was because Jesus himself, in a vision after Jesus died, had sent Paul to the Gentiles. And again, that verb form of sent was apostle.
And he said to me, "Depart, because I will send you far away to the nations."
Barnabas, Paul's partner at one point, was also called an apostle.
Which when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of, they rent their clothes and ran in among the people, crying out.
James, the brother of Jesus, was also an apostle.
But other of the apostles saw I none, save James, the Lord's brother.
John the Baptist was sent in John 3:28, and there are likely even more apostles than what we just mentioned. In 1 Thessalonians, it implies that Paul and his companions at the time in Thessalonica were apostles. That was after the time of Barnabas. According to Acts chapter 17, Silas was with him at the time, but in his letter, 1 Thessalonians 1:1, he's writing both from Paul and his companions Silvanus and Timotheus. So it's possible that all of them were considered apostles. Certainly more than one was. So it was Paul plus someone else. At the minimum, it was probably Silas. And in 1 Corinthians 15:7, it seems to imply that a group of apostles larger than the original 12 saw the resurrected Jesus. Now, Jesus had sent his 12 apostles to go to the villages saying the kingdom was coming, but he also sent a group of 70. And again, same verb form of what we know of as apostle. So those 70 were probably all considered apostles as well, even though they weren't considered the 12. The noun for apostle is not found in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures. But the verb form of apostle is used, with God being the one who is doing the sending. It correlates with the Hebrew verb shalach, and it refers to a number of interesting things. There was an angel or messenger, those words mean the same thing, that God sent to the people of Israel to lead them into the promised land. Elijah the prophet was being sent before a great and terrible day. And again, we've talked about this before. This was specifically referring to John the Baptist. There were prophets that were sent to Judah to warn them. Jeremiah records this. And also a phrase from Jeremiah, there was this group of people called fishers of men that were sent by God before his judgment.
Behold, I will send for many fishers, saith the Lord, and they shall fish them. And after will I send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain, and from every hill, and out of the holes of rocks. For mine eyes are upon all their ways. They are not hid from my face, neither is their iniquity hid from mine eyes. And first I will recompense their iniquity and their sin double. Because they have defiled my land, they have filled mine inheritance with carcasses of their detestable and abominable things.
So when Jesus said to Andrew and Peter that they would be fishers of men, and we already talked about this was earlier in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, could they have realized that they would be sending a message which would be rejected, and this rejection would lead to God's judgment, and that they themselves were a fulfillment of Jeremiah 16? Now they were given authority to heal sicknesses and to cast out demons. Jesus not only had the authority of illnesses and demons himself, which he had demonstrated up to this point, but now he has the authority to bestow this gift to his apostles. This was repeated again when he sent them out to the villages on their own to preach and heal.
He called his 12 disciples together to him. He gave them power and authority over all the unclean demon spirits to cast them out and to heal every sickness and cure every disease.
This power was described earlier as the power of the Lord. So these 12 apostles were sent. These 12 apostles were given power. These 12 apostles had a unique position, both present and for the future. But they weren't the last to be sent, and they weren't the last that were granted power. This isn't just history, this concept of apostles being sent with power. This story continues.